After several days of delay, the so-called Respect for Marriage Act passed the House today and will go to President Biden for his signature. Congress voted to codify into federal law a decision made by 5 Supreme Court justices redefining God's institution of marriage. 12 Republican senators, as I mentioned, enabled this vote today by their action last week when they joined with all the Democrats in the Senate approving the measure. But today's vote was not without warning.
This bill only serves to further demonize biblical values by establishing a private right of action against organizations who believe in natural marriage, opening the floodgates for predatory lawsuits against people of faith. The bill's only purpose is to hand the federal government a legal bludgeoning tool to drive people of faith out of the public square and to silence anyone who dissents.
That was Missouri Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler, also the chair of the Values Action Team in the House. She and many others spoke out, giving warning to what this bill would do. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Congresswoman Mary Miller of Illinois. She represents the 15th Congressional District of Illinois. She also serves as a member of the House Education and Labor Committee. Congresswoman Miller, welcome back to the program.
Good afternoon. It's always an honor to be on here with you.
Thank you. It's always good to see you. I'm going to just ask you right off your thoughts on Congress today approving this measure that takes the Supreme Court's redefinition of marriage and puts it into federal law.
Right. Well, I join your disappointment and our viewers' disappointment in this egregious attack on our First Amendment rights. And, I think the fact that they rejected in the Senate, Senator Mike Lee's amendment to protect churches, religious organizations, and individuals who hold differing viewpoints, they rejected that because their goal is to go after Christians.
Now, there were fewer Republicans voting for it in the House than what we saw back in June when it first went through the House. So clearly, people were speaking to the members of Congress, and some of them were listening.
Yes, it is disappointing, though, because it's such an attack on our First Amendment right. And that's what's, made us stand out in all time of all history above other civilizations and governments is the freedom that we've had, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom of conscience.
This administration has been attacking all things faith, family, and freedom. And I want to go to a topic that you have been very focused on in your role on the Education Committee. The Biden administration had created this what they called a parents group to be advocates for parents. It was a front. But this week, after pressure, the Department of Education is disbanding this newly created National Parents Council after legitimate parents groups actually filed suit. You were at the center of this. Tell us about this.
Yes, well, it's the continuation of the Biden administration's attempt to silence and intimidate parents who are accurately and rightfully defending their children, and they want to know what's going on in their children's schools. And Biden has been using the Justice Department, the FBI, the National School Board Association, and others, and now forming this committee to, like I say, silence and intimidate parents. But I think the glorious thing about what has transpired is it's shown the power of the people that refuse to sit down and shut up. And I am so grateful to you parents, to you parental rights groups, and to the lawyers that are defending them, and that we had a victory there. It lasted about as long as the disinformation board that they created.
Yeah, the National Parents and Family Engagement Council is what they had called it, but because of these lawsuits, these parents groups, they're disbanding it. But I want to go to what you just said. It's very similar to the disinformation board, which the Department of Homeland Security put in. They got all the same type of pushback, and they said, oh, wait, we're not going to do this. but we found out they went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah.
So is there concern that they may go ahead with this quasi-parents group to provide cover for what the Department of Education is doing?
I don't know about that. That remains to be seen. But I do have to say, I tell people all the time, if they could, they would. And we can never rest because they're not going to quit. And they're after our freedoms, they're after our children. And I think it's showing us how important it is that we're fully engaged in what's going on in our children's lives. And, we should demand transparency in the schools and accountability. I mean, we've seen what's happened in Loudoun County. That is insane that they are trying to hide the facts. A rape occurred and then they transferred the student. They didn't notify the parents in the new school where the student had been transferred. I mean, this is crazy, and parents should be on fire mad.
Right.
And I just want to encourage people to run for school board and support other parents that have the courage to run.
Well, Loudoun
If
County.
you're not going to run, support someone that does.
Yeah, Loudoun County, as you mentioned, it's actually a good example of what is bad, but also what is good in terms of
Yes.
parents getting involved. We talked about earlier in the week, we were discussing the special grand jury's report that was unsealed, 92 pages, 25 pages of report and supporting documentation. Yesterday, as a result of this report and the agitation and the persistence of parents, the superintendent there, Superintendent Ziegler, was fired by the school board. He's the one that lied about the sexual assault that took place in the bathroom.
Yes, he was. And I think what we're seeing is a fire that's going across the country where parents are waking up and getting involved and finding out what's going on in their schools, showing up at school board meetings and wanting to have transparency of what's the curriculum is, what books they're using, what's in the library. And cases like this are so egregious. And I'm appalled at how long it's taken for him to be,
Right.
to be exposed. And it's just way too long.
But the parents were persistent and it happened.
Yes.
And that's persistence is the key, because you know this, they
Yes.
will try to block you, they will stall, they will do everything they can. You're an example of that persistence. Mary Miller, great to see you today. Thanks so much for taking time to join us.
Always great to be here. Thank you.